Oh boy, this video's been a long time coming. So I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan. I grew up with these games, I've played most of them multiple times over, and 100% every single game in the franchise. At least those available on PC. And as a longtime fan of Assassin's Creed, watching the discourse leading up to and following the release of Shadows has been interesting. Well, infuriating might be a more apt term. Seeing these pathetic anti-woke grifters pretend to be Assassin's Creed fans while they actively display a profound ignorance and total disregard for the history of this franchise that they purport to care about is enough to boil the blood of any actual Assassin's Creed fan. So look, my original plan with this video was to keep my cards close to my chest and keep it ambiguous which side of this issue I fall on, but frankly, fuck that. This is one of the most blatantly moronic hate campaigns to ever exist, and it is one that is deep in its death throes as it becomes ever more impossible to deny that Shadows is a good game that people like. Now, I've no doubt pissed a number of you off already, so let's just reel it back in right quick. If you've fallen for this obvious stupidity, then no, I honestly don't have that much respect for you, but it's not too late to turn that brain of yours on and actually use it for once. Redemption is within your grasp. So I'll lay out explicitly why you are completely and utterly wrong, and all you have to do is listen. And hey, if you still disagree, you're welcome to join my Discord, hop in VC, and debate me on it. But let's be honest, we both know you won't, because you are incapable of actually defending your ideas. Where better to start than with the existence of Yasuke? We will get to his depiction in game, but that's not where this began. Oh no. It started long before the release of Shadows, when the only thing we knew was that Yasuke was in the game and was being depicted as a samurai of Lord Nobunaga. This sent anti-woke YouTube into a tizzy, for the supposed reason that, while Yasuke was a real person and while he was undeniably a retainer of Lord Nobunaga, meaning that he served him in a military capacity, there is minimal to no evidence that he was given the rank of samurai, and depicting him as a samurai was an unacceptable historical inaccuracy. Now, whether or not Yasuke was a samurai is seemingly at least somewhat disputed at the moment, even if only by the anti-woke crowd, so for the sake of this video, I will avoid wading into those waters, and I will simply assume that Yasuke was a retainer to Lord Nobunaga and not an actual samurai. To be clear, I don't have a position on whether he was or was not a samurai historically. I simply haven't looked into it enough to have any sort of conviction on that topic. And the answer to that question is simply irrelevant for the arguments I plan to put forward. So I'm granting the position that Yasuke was not a samurai for the sake of simplicity and for the sake of argument. It is not my actual position, okay? Okay, moving on. Trust me, the anti-woke side has bigger issues than dealing with the veracity of that claim, because their arguments fall apart well before we even get to the point of needing to deal with it. In fact, damn near their entire argument is instantly disqualified because of just two little words. Those two words being, Assassin's Creed. That's right, Shadows doesn't exist in a vacuum. As a matter of fact, it exists in this thing called a franchise. And that's pretty convenient, because it means that we can look back at the previous games to get a better idea of what this franchise is all about. So let's just boot up, say, the first game in the franchise, and oh, what does that say? Oh, that's not good for the anti-woke crowd. Oh boy, it says it's inspired by historical events, and that it's a, work of fiction. Ooh, okay, so that's not convenient to their argument, so let's just go ahead and boot up the next game in the franchise, Assassin's Creed 2. Everyone's favorite, maybe they got rid of it there. Oh, nope, it's, still here. Okay, well, surely if we jump ahead a lot, let's go to a more recent game, like Mirage, surely it can't... okay, it's still there. It seems like Assassin's Creed is a franchise that is explicitly historical fiction. I mean, they tell you as much every single time you boot up any game in the franchise. Can't really get more explicit than that. Okay, so yeah, Assassin's Creed has always bent the truth a bit being historical fiction and all, but I mean, Shadows is getting a huge amount of backlash. Surely elevating Yasuke from retainer to samurai must be a particularly egregious break from the standard of historical accuracy set by the previous games for the internet to be having such a explosive reaction. So let's take a look back at some previous games, see what they're all about. In Assassin's Creed 2, the Pope Rodrigo Borgia is part of a secret Templar organization that schemes to control the world, and you get into a fistfight with him where he uses magical powers granted to him by the technology of the first civilization, an ancient precursor race that was wiped out before our time. Okay, that doesn't seem particularly historically accurate. Okay, but I'm not that well versed in my papal history, so maybe I'm just missing something. Let's keep going. In Assassin's Creed 3, they invented a Native American character that played a central role in the American Revolution, working directly for George Washington, and even steered Paul Revere's horse, making him more responsible for Paul Revere's midnight ride than even Paul Revere was.
I believe we are on course.
That doesn't seem too accurate either. Yep, no mention of Connor Kenway in Henry Longfellow's famous poem. Maybe he just left that part out. Okay, well, surely they handle sensitive issues with the utmost historical accuracy. What do you mean JFK was assassinated by the Templars? And they got Gandhi too, because Gandhi's leadership skills were actually a byproduct of an Apple of Eden. Yes, these are real pieces of Assassin's Creed lore. Welcome to the franchise. Okay, it seems like maybe, just maybe, Assassin's Creed is a franchise that more than simply having a history of taking creative liberties with history, it is actually predicated upon doing so. Hate to be the one to break it to you, but Assassins and Templars aren't real. The Isu do not really exist, and there isn't a secret Isu temple under the Vatican. Assassin's Creed has always taken great care to adhere to historical accuracy when crafting their worlds, but in equal measure, they have always taken massive liberties with regards to the main narrative of each game and its characters. So in a series predicated upon and riddled with historical inaccuracies, why is this one such a big deal? What possible reason could there be? What about this case is different than the others? While we all ponder such a truly difficult question to answer, hopefully we can all agree that historical accuracy has nothing to do with why people are upset about Yasuke's existence in Assassin's Creed Shadows. So if it's not that, what else could it be? Well, the next line of defense would be that the problem isn't that Yasuke's inclusion isn't accurate, but rather that it is culturally insensitive. The argument being that samurai were exclusively Japanese, and as such, promoting a foreigner to that rank is degrading and disrespectful to Japanese culture. And dagnabbit, it looks like I shot myself in the foot by conceding for the sake of argument that Yasuke wasn't actually a samurai, because how will I ever defeat such an ironclad argument? William Adams. Who is William Adams, you might ask? Well, good question. He's an English navigator who, you guessed it, became a samurai, and not a historically disputed one. And he's not the only example. Though it was exceptionally rare, foreigners did occasionally rise to the rank of samurai, so therefore it isn't offensive to Japanese culture to have a foreigner who rose to the rank of samurai, when there is historical precedent for that to occur. Unless, of course, there's an issue you take with this particular foreigner, but not with this one. But I can't imagine what that would be. The one last Hail Mary that the anti-woke crowd might try to wheel out is that Yasuke arrived in Japan in 1579, whereas William Adams arrived in 1600, 21 years later. They might argue that because Yasuke existed before the precedent of foreign samurai was established by the likes of William Adams, that therefore it is still inaccurate and Yasuke wouldn't have been promoted to a samurai at that time. At which point, we circle back around to the fact that this is historical fiction. And even if that is true, which I'm not saying it is, but even if it is, fudging the timelines a little bit is well within the bounds of historical fiction, and doesn't suddenly make the notion of having a foreigner samurai offensive, especially when foreign samurai would undisputedly be established only 20 years later. Again, at this point, the only thing we knew about Yasuke was that he would be in-game and would be depicted as a samurai. Given the franchise Shadows is a part of and the historical precedent of foreign samurai, there were absolutely no issues that you could possibly have with Yasuke that didn't stem specifically from the color of his skin. Yes, that's what I've been alluding to, and no, I wasn't being subtle, but in fairness, neither were you. The historical and cultural concerns about Yasuke were and are a front, and an obvious one at that. They don't hold up to the slightest form of scrutiny. Anyone, and I mean anyone, who used their brain for one iota of a second could easily see through this poorly constructed facade. So there is absolutely no argument that can be made for Yasuke's inclusion being problematic prior to the game's launch. Okay, so All the hate in the lead up to the launch was blatantly based on false foundations and stemmed from a very dark place, but hey, maybe time would prove them right, and Yasuke's in-game depiction would end up being ridiculously offensive, even though there was zero evidence indicating that would be the case. Yet unsurprisingly, no, that didn't happen. Yasuke's representation was remarkably respectful, as a core part of his character is that he has a huge amount of reverence for the culture of Japan. When he goes into training under Lord Nobunaga, he shows nothing but deference to his teacher. Additionally, Yasuke has to earn his skills and rank by going through extensive training, in which he gets repeatedly humiliated by his teacher, an old man who is half his size. Point being, he isn't some perfect fighter from the outset, which is a form of bad writing that often gets labeled as woke by idiots. There have been some smaller controversies that popped up, like how players could destroy parts of shrines in Shadows, and people were mad because this was Ubisoft being disrespectful, which is mind-bogglingly stupid given that destroying the shrine is obviously a choice made by the player, not the developer. Not only that, but the game explicitly goes out of its way to tell the player to be respectful to the shrines, and on top of that, the objectives that you get rewarded for at these locations are praying and meditating. It sure seems like the player in this clip went against everything the game indicated they should do in order to find something to be mad about. And in spite of the blatantly manufactured and contrived nature of this controversy, Ubisoft still patched it so shrines couldn't be destroyed, which is Ubisoft going above and beyond to be respectful of Japanese culture, as this is not, I repeat, not a standard that has ever been applied to any of their previous games. I'll also point out that it is hilarious to hear people clutching their pearls over how offensive all this stuff supposedly is to Japanese culture, when those same people were calling Lady Nene ugly because she practiced, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, where women would shave their eyebrows and then paint them on their forehead, which was a common practice in this era of Japan. The anti-woke people were instead claiming that this was woke because Ubisoft was trying to make women ugly. Talk about actually being disrespectful to Japanese culture, the fucking hypocrisy. Now that the game is out, these people are grasping at straws trying to find anything to be upset about in a futile attempt to post hoc justify their unjustified hate campaign. The simple fact of the matter is that Assassin's Creed Shadows is just another Assassin's Creed game, one that goes above and beyond the other games in the franchise to be respectful of the culture it depicts. The other fact of the matter is that people like it, and it has been a success for Ubisoft. It's sitting at very positive on Steam despite review bombing, and it's already outperformed Assassin's Creed Odyssey and exceeded Ubisoft's projections. The only Assassin's Creed game that Shadows has underperformed is Valhalla, which came out at the height of COVID, and no one, least of all Ubisoft, expected Shadows to hit those same numbers. It might not be enough to save Ubisoft, who knows? They are in quite the precarious situation, but that doesn't change the fact that the game has been successful and is well liked by those of us who have, actually played it, including Japanese reviewers. And before you try your last pathetic attempt at deflection by calling me a Ubisoft shill, I would point you to my previous video where I talk about my thoughts on Shadows and spend a sizable amount of the runtime complaining about it. It is far from a perfect game, but not for any of the reasons you've given. Okay, let's calm down a bit. Now, if you're someone who came into this video agreeing with the Shadows hate, and you made it this far into the video, I genuinely want to thank you, because whether I convinced you or not, you heard me out, and in that, I assure you, you are the minority. Now, to this hypothetical viewer, assuming you do exist, I would like to offer an olive branch, because while my video has been dripping with well-deserved condescension, I don't think you're an inherently bad person for buying into this stuff. You've been duped and taken for a ride by a bunch of grifters on the internet. But what defines you isn't the stupid beliefs you held in the past or the stupid beliefs you hold right now, but instead, what defines you is how you react when presented with evidence that you are wrong. And you are. But that's okay, so long as you can understand where you went wrong and learn from it. Now, for the rest of you anti-woke idiots that are still clinging to your indefensible beliefs, your arguments have been dismantled and your true intent has been well and truly exposed. Not that it was ever that hidden. You have no ground left on which to stand, and in the words of a great assassin,
Requiescat in pace.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I have no doubt this video is going to get me a fair bit of hate, so doing all the YouTube stuff, liking, subscribing, commenting, all that would be a good way of offsetting it, and it would be greatly appreciated. Oh, and don't worry, this won't become my main content or anything. They just made the mistake of saying stupid stuff about a game I know and care about. Alright, you all have an awesome day. Bye.